Today we are going to discuss Leah Rafalco. She is also known as Hilary Swank, the actress Hilary Swank. So I knew her back in the late 90s, starting around 1997. And her boyfriend was a guy named Josh Medina. And Josh Medina's professional name is Dave Chappelle. He is the actor known as Dave Chappelle. So a group of these actors had a house in Newtown, Connecticut, in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, which was the place of that school shooting. So they all had names that they used on the street. For example, Joaquin Phoenix went by the name of Ivan Becker, and Cameron Diaz went by the name of Khalees. I do not know Khalees's last name. So Cameron Diaz and Joaquin Phoenix acted as a couple, and they rented a house in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, and their roommates were Hilary Swank and Dave Chappelle. So I knew Joaquin Phoenix from high school, and I was friends with Joaquin Phoenix. He used the name Ivan. So in 1997, I was living with my girlfriend named Kim Smith, and Kim Smith's professional name is Kristen Stewart. She acts under the name of Kristen Stewart. So I was living with Kristen Stewart, and I had a full-time job at Danbury Ambulance. I worked there as a wheelchair car van driver, and later I became an emergency medical technician. And I also occasionally drove the limousines there on the weekends. So I always worked a lot of hours over there. I would work like 50, 60 hours a week sometimes. And I like to drink on occasion. And I would also smoke pot. So I had kept in contact with Joaquin Phoenix, and he would call me on the phone ever so often, or I would run into him places like the mall, and he would invite me over to have a few beers after work. So Kristen Stewart and I would drive over to him and Cameron Diaz's house, and we would drink on the weekend sometime. And that was when I was introduced to Josh Medina, who looked like this at the time. He did not look like Dave Chappelle that you see on the movies, because these people, they specialize in changing the way they look. They do not want to be recognized when they're on the street. This guy, Josh Medina, he acts as Dave Chappelle and probably 2, 3, 4, 5 different other people. So they were used to constantly changing the way that they look. So when you see these people on the street, you won't recognize them as being celebrities. Hollywood is known to make people larger than life. They look like giants up on the big screen. They look like beautiful people. But the truth is that when you meet them in public, they look like regular people. They don't look exceptionally good looking. They are often shorter than they appear on the screen. For some reason, Hollywood likes to hire actors that are very short statured people. They're all closer to 5 feet tall than 6 feet tall. So for some reason, Hollywood likes to do that. So Josh Medina, Dave Chappelle, and his girlfriend Hilary Swank, she went by the name of Leah Rafalco, were known to never work. They never had jobs that I can remember. I remember Joaquin Phoenix saying that he worked at the mall. He worked at the Danbury Fair Mall. But Josh Medina, Dave Chappelle, made no attempt to hide the fact that he did not like to work. I think he said he never had a job, and he liked to sell weed for money. And he went on to sell ecstasy. So I remember stopping by Ivan Becker's house in Newtown, Connecticut, in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, to buy weed a couple of times from his roommate, Dave Chappelle. And when I first met Dave Chappelle, he wouldn't come out of his room. And he was up there with Leah Rafalco, Hilary Swank, and they were on crystal meth. They were on speed. And Ivan Becker said that they would stay in the room most of the time just taking crystal meth. and they didn't want to come out for like days. They would stay up there. They would only come out when their drug dealer arrived with more crystal meth. So Hilary Swank and Dave Chappelle are drug addicts. They're drug addicts. And both of them went on to use OxyContin. They went on to use heroin and OxyContin. So I guess around 1998 or 1999, Joaquin Phoenix broke up with Cameron Diaz, and he got a condo in Danbury, Connecticut that was only a short ways away from where I lived, in Brookfield, Connecticut. By that time, Kristen Stewart and I had gotten a condo. We had gotten a mortgage on a condo, and that was located on Federal Road in Brookfield, Connecticut. So I really wouldn't see Josh Medina or Hilary Swank too often. I was always busy at work, and when I would get back from work, I would just want to hang out with my girlfriend and enjoy my time off. I didn't like to go out too often. And a lot of these kids that I was friends with that turned out to be celebrities and actors and actresses, the reason that they're hanging out with me is for criminal reasons involving their secret society. And what they like to do is they like to hang out with regular kids, and they kind of copy their lifestyle. It's kind of cool for them to hang out with a regular kid who's like a skater or just some regular kid, and then they emulate him or emulate her for their next big movie. That's what these people do. And when they're allowed to, when they have the opportunity, oftentimes what these famous celebrities do, along with their secret societies that have ties to the MK Ultra program in the US military and the British military, is they like to attack these kids that they get to know. These kids that they target end up falling victim to occult crimes, religious occult crimes. And this is all part of their secret societies. This is all part of their occult religion. And these elitists, this is what they do for fun. A lot of them are on drugs, and they all act in roles in Hollywood and the US government. And for fun, they'll target some of these people they get to be friends with. So I think it might be interesting for them to get to know somebody, and then to watch that person be made homeless, and then eventually get abducted, and then tortured and killed. For some reason, it makes it more interesting for them if they know that person. They get a thrill from that for some reason, because these people are very sick people. And like I said, they are drug addicts. And just because they're in Hollywood, or just because they come from wealthy families, does not mean that they're high-class people. Does not mean that they are a quality person. In fact, in my opinion, all of these elitists, when you get to know them, they act like white trash. They act like real low-class people, because that is what they are. And that is what is promoted in the military and this establishment that wants to do these crimes against regular, innocent citizens. So I wouldn't want to hang out with them too often. Oftentimes, I would get a bad feeling around them. I would come down with anxiety when I would get around them. I would be in a good mood. And then when I get around them, I would feel anxiety. And because of that, I picked up the bad habit of drinking. So I guess you could call me a social alcoholic, but that is just an alcoholic anyway. As long as you depend on drinking alcohol in social situations. And that, of course, will lead to drug use. So these celebrities, they know where to get all the good drugs. And in the late 90s, around 1999 and 2000, there was a large amount of the drug called ecstasy that flooded into the state of Connecticut and I guess New York. Dave Chappelle said that he was getting the drugs from New York. And one time I gave him a ride to the train station, and we jumped on the train and we went into New York City. where he met his dealer, and they made a drug deal right on the train. The drug dealer got on the train at a certain stop, and I believe that the drug dealer was this individual shown here. I got this photo off of Facebook. This guy is a friend of Josh Medina, also known as David Chappelle. And I recognized him to be the drug dealer that Dave Chappelle met in New York City on the train that day. So these ecstasy pills were not just MDMA. These were actually designer drugs, and they had really interesting names to them. And one of the pills were called Mitsubishis, and they said the name was double stacked chocolate-filled Mitsubishis. And what they were is they were a mix of the drug MDMA, which is straight ecstasy, and they also had large amounts of amphetamines and painkillers like morphine or some type of heroin in the ecstasy pills. And they were pretty big. They were twice the size of an aspirin. And what was interesting is that they were white, but they had these brown spots all over the pills. These brown spots will come to the surface, and what that suggested is that they had high amount of heroin in there, because oftentimes heroin is a tan powder. So that is what they had in these ecstasy pills. So when you would take these, you would be taking heroin, some sort of amphetamine, and MDMA. So quickly, that became the drug of choice, and that replaced my desire to drink in social situations. There would be different parties, or there would be clubs or bars that we would go to, and instead of drinking, I prefer to take an ecstasy pill. And part of the reason for that is because alcohol is a sloppy drug, and oftentimes I would find that I would get into trouble, especially when hanging out with these people when I was drinking. And I think a good amount of it is that they wait until you're intoxicated, and then they provoke arguments, or they set up a situation in where they act like you have done something wrong to insult them. And the truth is that you haven't done really anything wrong, but they blow it out of proportion or act like you have. And since you're drinking, you really cannot see what they're doing clearly. So I want to tell everybody that alcohol is the worst drug to take. If you ever think that you are surrounded by these type of people from the MK Ultra program, sooner or later, you are going to get arrested, you're going to go to jail, or you're going to wind up dead if you continue to drink. So I urge everybody not to drink. You might miss it for a period of months or a year, but once you give up drinking and you start exercising more, you don't need to drink. You feel stronger and better than you ever did in your whole life, as long as you quit cigarettes and alcohol. You wonder why you even started that. You'll feel like you felt when you were a young person, when you were a kid, and you never needed that stuff. You just felt normal or good. You could get back to that level. You just have to give up alcohol and cigarettes and pick up exercise. You have to start exercising, and that will get the endorphins and the adrenaline working in your system again, and your body will get better, and your chemicals will realign themselves, and you won't have the anxiety or depression anymore. And to be honest with you, sometimes that is a warning sign. When you get around certain people and you don't feel right, oftentimes that's a warning sign that these people aren't so good. And if you're not having a good time with them and they give up some of the signs that they may be involved in something, or they may be up to something that is no good, you'll have your wits about you and you'll just dump them as friends, because they are not real friends. They are here to watch you suffer and die. That's the only reason these people want to hang out with you, to take advantage of you and to use you. So anyway, ecstasy replaced alcohol as my drug of choice. And for a while, I thought it was pretty good because at the worst, I would get kind of tired with the ecstasy pills. And if I was sitting on a sofa, I would start to nod out a little bit. But unlike alcohol, the ecstasy pills never affected you in a way that would kind of inhibit your judgment. So I like the ecstasy pills better because they tended to put you in a better mood. Sometimes alcohol would create an angry or a confused environment if everybody's getting drunk. But the ecstasy pills tended to create an environment that was more peaceful. But I think that was the plan of the military when they introduced all these ecstasy pills to that area. So they were very cheap at first. If you took one of these pills, they would last for 2 or 3 hours, and you would spend something like 15 bucks on them, 15 or 20 bucks on the pills. So that's a lot cheaper than buying drinks at a bar. So at first they were very affordable and they were very potent, and everybody would comment on the different ecstasy pills. Sometimes there would be a variety of them, and what they would say is, are these pills speedy or dopey? And I know that sounds a little stupid, but that's how the kids talked. And speedy meant that they had more of an amphetamine in there, so they gave you more energy. And the dopey ones had more of the heroin or the morphine in them, and they would sedate you. So I think that that was not by accident that they kind of introduced or used that terminology, because everyone seemed to like the dopey pills better. So about a year later, when the ecstasy connection ran dry, when people like Josh Medina, also known as Dave Chappelle, and Leah Rafalco, also known as Hilary Swank, what they like to recommend is to just go buy dope, what is called dope, and that is heroin. So I was introduced to a dealer that sold bags of dope, is what they called it. And they were small wax paper bags with some powder in the bottom of it. And they would go for about $15. And if you were willing to drive to the nearby city of Waterbury, you could sometimes get those bags for like $7 each. You would buy a pack of 10 for $70. And those bags would last you 2 or 3 days, one bag. So if you bought a bundle of 10, that'll last you maybe 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks. So that is how you start a heroin addiction, by just buying dope, because the local MK Ultra program got you used to buying dopey E-pills. So it started off as just you like E, and now you're on dope because of these people that you're hanging out with. So when I first met them, like I said, I like to drink beer and smoke pot. And then after hanging out with these people for a year or two, I'm now buying dope or street heroin. So that is how people like Dave Chappelle and Hilary Swank introduce a heroin addiction into your life. So I remember when Dave Chappelle said that he couldn't get ecstasy anymore, and at first he could only get what was called mollies, and they are just MDMA. They were smaller pills, they were red, and you would take them and they were not that strong. And that lasted for a month or two, and then after that there was just no ecstasy at all. And Dave Chappelle said that he couldn't get it from his dealer anymore because he owed his dealer money, and he never paid his drug dealer, and so he was cut off. So to this day, I do not know if that was a part of the scam to get certain people on heroin, but David Chappelle and his girlfriend Hilary Swank both had an Oxycontin addiction. They would buy what was called Oxycontins, 80 milligram Oxycontins, and I think they would spend something like $50 or $60 a pill on the Oxycontins. So I guess that is not even affordable if you're a famous actor, and that is how they end up controlling a lot of these well-paid actors, is through a drug habit. So after Joaquin Phoenix moved from Sandy Hook, Newtown to Danbury, Connecticut, I think sooner or later Dave Chappelle moved in there, and another one of their friends, another one of our friends that lived there, was a kid named Kyle Reardon, and Kyle Reardon's professional name is Kip Pardue. It's the actor known as Kip Pardue. So they were all living at that condo on Federal Road in Danbury, and it was like a 2-minute drive away from where I lived on the same road, but in Brookfield, Connecticut. So at some point, Joaquin Phoenix moved out of that condo, and it was just Dave Chappelle living there. And I would not see him too often, but sometimes when I would stop over there, maybe every month, on an average of maybe every month, sometimes his girlfriend Leah Rafalco would be there, and sometimes she wouldn't. And so Leah Rafalco, also known as Hilary Swank, I guess would stay with her grandmother. That is what Josh Medina would tell me every time I asked, where's Leah? Where's your girlfriend? Oh, she's back living with her grandmother. And at some point, I guess around 1999, he had said that Leah is pregnant. And when you see somebody only once a month, and sometimes you're just dropping in to buy an eighth of weed or to buy an e-pill, you don't really take note of everything that is happening in that house. And so sometimes Leah Rafalco, also known as Hilary Swank, would be there, and sometimes she wouldn't. And if I ever asked Josh where she was, he would say that she was at her grandmother's house. So around 1999, I remember a bunch of kid toys being at his apartment. In the dining room area, instead of a dining room table, they had a ton of kids toys, and that included the Teletubbies. And these Teletubbies were like 2 foot tall or 3 foot tall dolls. They were these giant Teletubby dolls. So there was either 2 or 3 bedrooms there, and one of the doors were always shut. And Josh may have mentioned that that was the kids' room. So I never saw his kid. I think a few times I went over there, and I was hanging out with Josh Medina and Leah Rafalco, and I was being kind of loud. I was telling jokes and laughing, and I think Leah's told me to be quiet because the baby is sleeping. They like hushed me because I was being too loud. But I don't remember ever going over there and the kid being out. So many times I went over there and Leah Rafalco wasn't even there. So it makes sense when you realize that these people were celebrities. So they were constantly going to make films. So I was a good friend to have because I like to spend a lot of time by myself, and I always worked many hours. So like I said, months would go by and I wouldn't see my friends, and they would call me up out of the blue, or I would run into them somewhere. But I wasn't the type of kid that would have to call my friends, you know, every day or every couple of weeks. So I don't remember seeing the kid. I cannot remember a time when they had the kid out, but quite possibly they did, and I just didn't take notice if Leah was walking back and forth holding a baby or something. It's just something that a young man who's like 23, 24 wouldn't notice when he shows up at his buddy's house after work to talk about a party or picking up some weed or eat. You just take it for granted that they have a kid and you're not that interested in the baby. So Kip Pardue, also known as Kyle Reardon, said something interesting to me. And what he said is that Leah and Josh would leave their daughter in the crib so much that they wouldn't turn the baby. When the baby is an infant, you have to make sure that you turn the baby so that the baby isn't sleeping on one side of their head, because their skull is still being formed. And if you don't rotate the baby and they just end up sleeping on one side of their head, it'll change the way their skull is shaped. And they did not do that, and they allowed the baby to sleep on her back, and so therefore the baby got a flat head. And Kip Pardue said something like, "Did you see their kid? Did you see their kid's head?" And I said something like, "No, I didn't. I haven't seen their kid." And Kip Pardue kind of laughs inappropriately and says, "Well, they don't know anything about rotating the baby, and the back of the baby's head is all effed up," meaning that it is flat, I guess. So I broke up with Kristen Stewart in the summer of 2001, and that is a whole different story about the Hollywood military establishment and all of their problems that they try to pull you into. So we went down to Virginia Beach for vacation, and she decided to stay down there with her uncle. She wanted to move in with her uncle and her uncle's wife and their 2 kids, instead of coming back home to our condo in Brookfield. So we broke up, and I guess this was around July of 2001. So it was kind of a stressful time in my life, because I couldn't afford all the bills at our condo. She had a pretty good salary, supposedly working at a dermatologist's office in New Canaan, Connecticut. And by that time, I was working at a place called Bethel Sand and Gravel, and I was only getting paid about $12.50 an hour. So at that time, Dave Chappelle began to call me on the phone like every day. Every day when I got home from work, there would be 2 or 3 messages from Dave Chappelle. So this was in the summer of 2001, and I guess this was the time when I spent the most time with Dave Chappelle. And another guy that we were hanging out with was named Jesse Landa. So Jesse Landa went on to become the actor known as The Rock. So what is funny is that Jesse Landa, I think he is Irish. So here's a picture of The Rock, and The Rock doesn't have his spray tan on. He doesn't have his skin dye on. And as you can see, he's very pale. So Jesse Landa was a bodybuilder. He was around 6'2" or 6'3" tall, and he was well over 200. I think he said he was 230 or 240 pounds. And it's very funny how Hollywood could change the whole look of their actors. So here's an Irish guy, and they could change him to look like a I don't know, Hawaiian guy, whatever nationality The Rock is. I don't know if he's mulatto or Hawaiian, native Hawaiian, or what he is supposed to be. But in fact, Jesse Landa, who acts as The Rock, is a white man. So The Rock, also known as Jesse Landa, is also a heroin addict. He was also addicted to painkillers. And I think he was also on steroids. He was always a real big guy, but he would buy the bags of street dope, part of the influence, along with Dave Chappelle, that went from me taking ecstasy to the ecstasy well running dry and changing to street dope, which everybody else was on, or seemed to be on in that area. And everyone was Dave Chappelle, Hilary Swank, and The Rock, just hanging out with people that use that, and it being affordable just normalizes a heroin habit. So for people who have never taken drugs, it sounds pretty terrible to say that you were on heroin. You wonder how anybody would want to go buy heroin and start a heroin habit. That's just not something that most people would try to do. But that is how something like that happens. The CIA, the military establishment, they specialize in gateway drugs. and turning a certain community onto harder and harder drugs. That's a huge tool and a money-making product for the U.S. military. They run all the drugs in the country, and they make a ton of money off of heroin and cocaine. So they'll use gateway drugs like ecstasy to normalize harder drug use. So around the end of summer of 2001, Josh Medina said that he broke up with Hilary Swank, and she didn't want to come visit him at the condo anymore. And they had broken up. And at that time, he said that she was making her money as a stripper. She was doing nude dancing at a nightclub. So that is also a common thing for these celebrities to get involved in. And it's not just dancing at a nightclub, but it's the whole pornography industry. Many of the celebrities that you see in well-known movies have all done lots of pornography films. That is often how they got their start in acting. They couldn't get any regular jobs in acting until they starred in a few pornography films, and then through that they were given offers in regular films. So I was just researching a guy named Ian McKellen, and I came across a phrase that they use, and it's called director's rights respected. And what that means is that if you give an actor a role in one of your movies, you as a director have rights to sleep with them. If the actor says director's rights respected, what they're referring to is that they will have sex with the director. If you cast them in your movie, they'll have sex with you. So Ian McKellen was being interviewed, and he jokingly referred to that, and it seemed kind of commonplace for these people to use that terminology. So prostitution is a big part of the Hollywood military establishment, just like drug use. So these people are used in pornography. They're used as prostitutes, and they have drug problems. So that is why I'm telling you that just because they look like a real hot lady or a real hot guy in a film, and they're saying some intelligent stuff that they're told to say in their role, doesn't mean that they're not low-class people. Doesn't mean that they're not a low caliber of people. That seems to be what the military prefers to work with, because these people are easy to control. If you give these people millions of dollars to act in movies, if they have a drug habit, it's real easy for the establishment to get all that money back from them. And it's real easy to involve them in these ritualistic or occult crimes through the secret societies. If they are kept relatively poor, they'll do anything for money. They'll do anything for more money, for more drugs. And if they are a good actor, they could act as anything. They could act as your neighbor. They could act as a single woman or a single man in your workplace. And then if you start dating them, you essentially have an MK Ultra agent in your house. And they'll easily just open the door at night after you fall asleep and allow any group of people in there to do whatever they want. And later on, when the cops are writing the police report, they'll be sure to tell the cops whatever the military wants them to say. So this is organized crime. This is how the military is attacking the citizens of their own country and making money off of it. This is how they're destroying American families. This is how they're destroying the middle class. And I guess their plans are to marry people and then kill them in snuff films that they'll sell on the internet. That is going to be their new pornography, is these snuff films. So they'll make whatever money they can make off of killing American families, and then they're going to make money off of the people's deaths by showing them in snuff films. So these people are very evil people. And these are the type of people that they have no problem working with. And they are prostitutes. And they are drug addicts. And in most cases, I would imagine that these people have been getting molested since they were kids by the military's secret society through the MK Ultra program. And that is why pedophilia and human trafficking is so rampant in the MK Ultra program. When you hear about mind control programs, they talk about trauma-based mind control and sexual abuse, because it indoctrinates these type of people to go on to do worse and worse crimes while working for the US military. And they have these prostitutes that work for them that act as spies. So they'll take Hilary Swank and they'll have her date a dignitary or a middle-class businessman in some country in order to get close to him to take them out. And that is just spy work for the CIA. They want women who are used to sleeping with hundreds of men and using sex to get ahead. So that is something that Hilary Swank will be used for. So around 2002, Hilary Swank had supposedly broken up with Dave Chappelle. And Dave Chappelle, he acted pretty unhappy about it. He was in a pretty bad mood. And he had a shoebox filled with old photos that he was going through. And he was saying, I'm just gonna throw out everything in this condo. So if you want some photographs, go ahead and take them, because this is just gonna wind up in the dumpster anyway. So he was throwing pictures on the table, and he said, here's a picture of my daughter. Here's a picture of me. Here's another picture of my daughter. And he's kind of throwing them on the table. So I'm picking them up and kind of holding them in my hand. So I got a few pictures of his daughter shown here. So the weird thing is that many years later, around 2016, I'm looking at Facebook, and I think I got a friend request, or it was a suggested Facebook page, like, you might know this person if you're friends with this person. And it was a Facebook page for a guy named Michael Hudak. So Michael Hudak also went to Brookfield High School, and he is also an actor. I believe that he is the actor in this Netflix TV series called Archive 81. I believe that this may be Michael Hudak. If not, chances are he is some other public figure that maybe somebody could identify, because that is what all these people from this area turned out to be. Everybody from this military-controlled region of Brookfield and New Milford, Connecticut, went on to be given many roles in the Hollywood or media establishment. That's essentially one of the only things that are left in America that pays any money, is the media. They need to tell everybody else that everything is going just fine, while all the businesses are being shut down and our economy gets worse and worse. The military wants full control over the media, so there's always tons of positions for their people in the media. So that's what many of these people went on to be. So this is Michael Hudak, and in my opinion, he looks crazy. This is not a normal or a wholesome look for a father here. This guy looks like he's on drugs or he's on some sort of mind control. This is not a normal or wholesome look, and this is supposedly his daughter. So I guess that this was his wife. She looks like an African American woman that he's photographed with here. And so through that marriage, they had a mixed race daughter, supposedly. But the weird thing is that after Michael Hudak caught my attention as having this kind of sadistic or bizarre look on his face that just suggested somebody who was evil, I looked real closely at all of his photographs, and this looks like Dave Chappelle and Hilary Swank's daughter. So I kept all the photographs that Dave Chappelle gave me back in 2001, and that included 2 or 3 photographs of his daughter. And if you compare them to this girl on Michael Hudak's Facebook page, this is the same girl. This is Dave Chappelle and Hilary Swank's daughter. This is Dave Chappelle and Hilary Swank's daughter, who was with Michael Hudak. And this is the expression on Michael Hudak's face. This is what caught my attention. This guy looks like a nut. This guy looks like he is up to no good. This guy looks like he considers everything a big joke. The world is just a big joke. And he has this sadistic grin on his face. So I don't know why somebody would select these photos of themselves other than this is his normal look. This guy is getting away with murder, so to speak. And he just feels really good about everything. So when I started looking at the photographs of this young lady, she looks around 15 or 16 years old in these photographs, I recognized her too. So in the year 2013, I was visiting my children in Keene, New Hampshire, and I was staying at the hotel, and the hotel has a pool in it. So one night I brought my daughters down to the pool, and we're playing around having a great time. And then a African American walks in wearing sunglasses, and he is kind of short and he's kind of fat, and he's real suspicious looking in that he's wearing sunglasses like he wants to hide his eyes. And with him is this young lady right here. With him is this young female photographed with Michael Hudak. And when they get into the pool, the guy begins to pick her up underneath her arms and just kind of throw her around the pool. And the girl is laughing, like almost hysterically. And she continues to kind of look over at me to see if she's getting my attention. And so I don't especially like it because he's being kind of rough with her. But she is laughing like she's used to being manhandled or moderately abused by these older men. So many times kids would say, ow, you know, that hurts. Don't do that. If, you know, you're picking them up and you throw them around a pool or something. But it looked like she was kind of used to that and really couldn't say no. She lacked the ability to say no to him. And she was kind of grimacing, or she kind of had a pained expression on her face a couple of times when he was doing this. But of course, they start them at a young age doing this MK Ultra work, and so they were both agents and they were both there to kind of provoke me. And so this was another attempt to get me to start arguing with somebody or glaring at them and then provoke a fight, and then rather quickly I'll get arrested and my children would be at the mercy of the police or the hotel management. So they were really going out of their way to make a scene at the pool. And I did get a real close look at her. And this is the same girl photographed with Michael Hudak. So this is believed to be Josh Medina and Leah Rafalco's daughter, also known as Dave Chappelle and Hilary Swank's daughter. So at some point, obviously when she was very young, for some reason, she begins to live or spend time with Michael Hudak. So this may be why I did not see this little girl when I would go see Dave Chappelle and Hilary Swank at their condominium. They had a crib there, they had toys there, they had photographs of the little girl, but I never saw them with their little daughter. So if you take a look at this photograph of Hilary Swank, also known as Leah Rafalco, and their little girl, who looks like, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 in this photograph, just look at the expression, just look at the eyes of Leah Rafalco, also known as Hilary Swank. There is something seriously wrong with this look. She is kissing her daughter, and she is looking at the camera as if she has just evil intentions in her mind. So quite often we'll look at photographs and something like this would just escape us. We just won't see it for some reason. If you know these people, you just think, oh, she might have smoked too much pot that night, or she just a crazy girl. And so we are like programmed to fail to see certain things. But this is a look of evil. This is a look that suggests something is seriously wrong with mommy here. So even though I did not really notice it when I first got this photograph, I definitely notice it now. And I want to bring this to everybody's attention so they can begin to see what may be overlooked in society or in their own lives when they get to know these people who are part of these secret societies and are making it their life, that are making it their work to get involved in your life and try to pull you into their hell. And they seem to be getting along great with it. They seem to be people without any morality or any conscience whatsoever. They just don't care about people. The only things they care about, the only person they care about is themselves and how they're going to get their drugs. So this is the type of person that the military likes to promote. These are the type of people that will get the best jobs in Hollywood. This is just a perfect agent for the Hollywood military establishment that makes its living lying to the American people, fooling everybody into thinking that everything is going good. They have everybody's best interest in heart while they destroy your country and they set you all up to die. And if they get just their people in the public eye to act as your leaders, your politicians, your Hollywood stars, and then as your neighbors and your friends, you're going to start to see these antisocial tyrants as normal. You are going to start to see these soulless deviants as normal. So my guess is that the reason Dave Chappelle and Hilary Swank did not have their daughter hanging out with them more when I would stop by to visit is due to the fact that for some reason Michael Hudak, among others, had custody of her. That's my guess. And quite possibly she was being abused, sexually abused by members of their secret society that are involved in the MK Ultra program. And again, this indoctrinates the young people to be just like their parents. They really don't care about anybody because people don't really care about them. And they'll use their body or they'll sell themselves for profit. They'll be used as a prostitute. And if they do that and they go along with it and they let themselves be abused, they'll go on to get roles in movies or the media. So while the rest of America, slaves away for 15 or 20 bucks an hour, these people are the smart ones. They're above morality. They understand why they chose that lifestyle. They understand why they made decisions like that and made decisions for their children like that, because they become the elite. They're going to make hundreds of dollars an hour while the rest of America lives in poverty, gets paid essentially nothing. So this is your elite. So the people that they find that go along with the conspiracy are people like this. People that were sexually abused as children. People who have been used as prostitutes. People who have been used in pornography. And people who are drug addicts and have no morality or concern for anybody but themselves. They only care about themselves. So that summarizes exactly how Dave Chappelle and Hilary Swank acted when I knew them in the late 90s, 2000 and 2001. That is how they acted. So these are not real friends. So Dave Chappelle was good at getting you in trouble. So a few examples of that were one night, I think it was October of 2001. So he called me up and he said that there was a Halloween party in Danbury. And I could show up and meet him at his condo. And then we could jump into this other guy's car. And the other guy's name was Kelly Hardy. He went by the name of Kelly Hardy. Well, his professional name was Ryan Gosling. He acted under the name of Ryan Gosling. So it's interesting because my name is John Kelly Harwood. So Ryan Gosling decided to pick the name Kelly Hardy, which is very similar to my name. So Ryan Gosling was supposed to drive. So Dave Chappelle and I got into Ryan Gosling's car, and Ryan Gosling drove to the party. But on the way back, it was just me and Ryan Gosling. Dave Chappelle said that he had to go meet somebody, I think to drop off ecstasy for them. So he would meet us back at his condo. So when we got back to the condo, Dave Chappelle, he wasn't there. So the plan was for me to crash on the couch, and I wouldn't have to drink and drive. So we waited for like an hour, and who knows what happened to him. So I didn't know what to do other than drive my vehicle back home. I only live like maybe 5 minutes down the road. So I started the vehicle up, and I started to drive down Federal Road, and I was pulled over by a cop right in front of my condo. It was almost right in front of the entrance to my condo. And so I was arrested, and I lost my license. So this is the type of stuff that these guys will arrange to get you into trouble. Some people may argue that this is just what buddies do, but if you have buddies like this, chances are you're hanging out with members of a secret society. Another time before that, we're hanging out at Joaquin Phoenix's apartment in Sandy Hook, Newtown, Connecticut. So Joaquin Phoenix's girlfriend, Cameron Diaz, was there. My girlfriend, Kristen Stewart, was there. And Dave Chappelle was there. I don't think Hilary Swank was there that day. And so Kristen Stewart and Cameron Diaz went out to get cigarettes or something. And when they got back from the gas station, they started to complain to us that the guy at the gas station was very rude, and he was making suggestions that they should be strippers, that they look real hot, and they should consider a job being a stripper. And he was talking down to them and made them feel uncomfortable or not so good. So I said, well, let's go back there and confront him. And once again, I was drinking, so it was a bad decision to make. Just us guys went down there. The girls stayed back at the apartment. So we got down there, and I kind of walked into the gas station aggressively. And the guy darted into his booth, into the cash register booth. And he acted like he was real scared. And I think that I walked over and I kind of said, you shouldn't talk to my girlfriend like that. You shouldn't talk to your customers like that. That's sexual harassment. And I might have pushed something on the floor, like a box of candy or something right by the cash register. I might have shoved it toward him. So he must have called the cops when we left, and they pulled us over and they arrested me. It was like the cops knew not to arrest David Chappelle or Joaquin Phoenix. So usually if the cops are called on somebody because somebody created a disturbance, they're going to arrest, or they'll definitely take everybody out of the car that's kind of involved with that, because they're kind of a group that are acting together to do that. And I'm pretty sure that Dave Chappelle and Joaquin Phoenix, I'm pretty sure that they also walked into the gas station with me. So normally the cops would take everybody out of the car and frisk everybody and kind of give everybody a hard time while they questioned everybody. But the cops pulled us over and they went right for me. And the funny thing was is they pulled us over right down the road. I don't think we got very far down the road before the cops were on us. I think Joaquin Phoenix was driving and Dave Chappelle was in the passenger seat and I was in the back seat. They knew just to go after me, have me step out the car and arrest me. So that sort of thing gets me to believe that these things are arranged to destabilize somebody's life. So this is what I went through when I was a drinker. Because of these people, I would get a DUI, even though I planned ahead to get a designated driver or to find a place to crash for the night. If I was drinking, guys like Dave Chappelle would do things to get me arrested anyway, no matter what I did to try to avoid something like drinking and driving. And then the setup where these people would get me arrested for confronting a gas station employee who was sexually harassing his customers. These are things that these idiots who are part of these secret societies will come up with. So Dave Chappelle went on to be an ecstasy dealer. He would bring out a large Ziploc bag filled with something like 1,000 ecstasy pills. And he could potentially sell each one for $20. So he had $20,000 worth of ecstasy pills. So this was the guy that went on to introduce heroin into my life. And interestingly enough, he is the guy that introduced New Hampshire to my life. So one day, Dave Chappelle and Ryan Gosling gave me a call, and they said that some kids in Portsmouth, New Hampshire were waiting on ecstasy, but they had no way to get it up there because Ryan Gosling's car was not working well. It was getting ready to die. It had too many miles on it already, and it was getting ready to die. So Ryan did not want to drive it up there. So they gave me a call and asked if I wanted to go up to Portsmouth, New Hampshire to bring the ecstasy up and meet all of their friends up there because their friends are real cool. So that is another story that I will have to tell a different time. So that is the reason why I am in New Hampshire today, is because of these guys. But I do not think that they wanted me to go up there to have a good time, to meet my wife Rachel Vogt, to go on to have 2 beautiful daughters, and for once have some real people in my life. I really don't think that was the plan. I think the plan was to get me into trouble. I think the plan was to set me up, because if the Brookfield, New Milford area wasn't bad enough, the state of New Hampshire, I think, is the capital for occult ritual abuse, for secret societies, and all of these occult crimes that these secret societies are a part of, that the elite all take part in through the MK Ultra program. This is what they are into. This is what these lowlifes that are involved with the military, secret societies, and the media establishment, this is what they are a part of. So I have been watching movies for a long time. But that used to be my hobby, is renting films and then analyzing them and then critically reviewing them. I am no longer surprised as to why there are very few films that are released that are any good. Most of these films that are released are of such low quality, that are so negative, they have such negative messages. It makes complete sense when you realize what is in control of the arts and entertainment, what is in control of Hollywood and the media. You have the worst type of person being rewarded for being the worst, and they get promoted and elevated through this criminal military establishment. If you got some ethics, if you got morality, if you work real hard at something, if you try to do something well, this group is not going to want to promote you. They are going to want to promote you if you are the opposite of that. That is what they're promoting in American society now. These people who are nothing but prostitutes, as they are working to destabilize our society, as we're losing our economy, as we're losing all of our jobs. as we're losing our morality, as we're losing our common sense, as we're losing our intelligence, as our media, as our news continues to lie to us every day. This is what is promoted to cause all of that. This is what does all of that. These people who are nothing but prostitutes, not the best of our country, that have worked real hard to make something of themselves, to make a success of themselves. These people who are the biggest sellouts, these people who are the biggest weaklings, these people who are nothing but prostitutes.